I was on the way up, and I don't know if you know anything about flying, but if you ain't got no money, you're usually in the back of the plane. You group 6, 7, 8, and 9. I told y'all that last week, so I fly a lot, and I'm usually in that group, that 6, 7, 8, and 9. This time, I was in group 6. I was the first class of the poor people. But I didn't like sitting in the aisle, but because I didn't book this flight, they put me in the aisle seat, so I was already searching. I asked 2 people in front of me. I said, hey, do you want the aisle seat? Because usually people like the aisle seat, and I'll go cram myself into the window. Like I tell you, the window is my seat. So I didn't necessarily want the aisle. I asked 2 people. They both declined. I even tried to act real Christian, like, oh, no, you look taller than me. Would you like the aisle? He was like, no, I wanted the window. I was like, oh, okay, all right. But then I looked to the back of the plane before we took off, and I realized there was 2 back row seats. Now, if you know anything about the back row is not where you want to be. The back row means you in group 9. But I was like, nah, I want that window. So I went to the back row. I was like, hey, usher, attendant, whatever, can I go to the back row? He was like, I guess, yeah, sure. So I went to the back. And the whole time I realized I wanted the back, but I forgot that the back row doesn't what? Doesn't recline. So now I can't recline. I'm sitting straight up. If you know anything about black people, when we drive or fly, we don't sit straight up. I know one person who does. I'm not going to say his name, Rashad. He sits straight up when he drives. 6'9", closest steering wheel I could ever imagine. But I didn't. I looked at the button, though. I looked at the button on the seat, and I was like, why would you put a button on the seat? Is it just for temptation? I don't understand why you would put a button on the seat if it can't recline. So all of a sudden, at the end of the flight, I kind of woke up from my uncomfortable nap. I only had 3 hours of sleep the night before, and I was like, all right, I got it best as I could. I woke up, just the stubbornness in me is like, you know what, I'm going to press this button. So I pressed the button, and I pushed back. And I realized the whole time the seat could have reclined. I guess they making group 9 a little more luxurious. So I started to recline and realized I could have been comfortable the whole time if I would have just took away my past understanding, what people told me it was, I would have enjoyed my trip. I guess what I'm asking you right there, if you would take away your past understanding of tithes and offering, if you would take away your past experience of people coercing you in tithes and offering, maybe some of y'all will enjoy the trip. Maybe some of us would enjoy the fact that tithes and offering is a part of worship. You will be joyous when you drop your envelopes in the back because you realize that God is the one that provided you the button in the first place. I think that some of us have mistaken that you're sitting in group 9. Maybe you don't have a lot of money that you can't enjoy tithes and offering. I think because some of us are like, oh, I'm not sitting in first class. I don't got a lot of money. Why are you talking about giving? You know where we are as a church, and I'm sitting there telling you, just enjoy your button because you could do what God has given you the opportunity to do, and that is to recline your seat and relax. So today I pray this sermon relaxes you a little bit, but it also reminds you of what tithes and offering really is, and you will see that some of us have a misunderstanding about the seat because of past experiences and because of people talking about it. So I pray I do a good job and do it with purity that you will understand the beauty of God's word today. In Deuteronomy chapter 12, starting in verse 2, you will see that we are going to reassure ourselves that this is what God tells us about tithes and offering. He wants tithes and offering. It is not something the church has made up. And I want to make sure I erase your past understanding. It is not something that church decided to do to keep us getting bigger buildings. It is only because God required it, but for a certain purpose. And we'll talk about that. But watch this in verse 2. I want to remove any stigmatisms. I think the reason why many of us struggle to give is not because it's your money. It's because you forget whose money it is in the first place. Second, the reason why many of us struggle to give is because you have gods before you give. Here's the thing I've learned about us. And this is the thing I struggle with, so bear with me. We won't get into that verse. Is I think we've made idols so we can give to other things that are our idols, but we won't give to God. Like if I say, hey, save your money, buy the new J's, some of us are consumers. That's the problem with African Americans. We are consumers. We know what credit card debt is. We know what debt is, and we consistently buy things, and we make these things, these consumers, these consumerisms, our gods. So he starts here, and he says, I want you to do something for me. When you go to the promised land, when you make it there, when I provide a way for you to get there, remember this. They already split the Red Sea, and now you got to understand, when you get to this promised land coming in Joshua, I want you to understand something. The first thing I want you to do, verse 2, is you shall utterly destroy all the places where the nations from whom you shall dispossess serve their gods on their high mountains and on the hills and under every green tree. Verse 3, you shall tear down their altars and smash their sacred pillars and burn their asherim with fire, and you shall cut down the engraved images of their gods, and watch this word, and obliterate their name from that place. Have you noticed something? God is not about competition. What is the first commandment? If you just pay attention to the first commandment, it says, you shall love the Lord your God and love no other God but him. That our God is a what? A jealous God. There is nobody. He is avenging us. The beauty of the word jealous is not the fact that he just sit there in his throne and he's jealous that you love another God. The word that means he avenges you as well. So if he's jealous for you in a righteous way, he also avenges you if somebody hurts you. So the word jealousy means that you're mine. You're all mine. Let's say some other guy walks up to Monica and he's taller, stronger, bigger, faster, better looking. That's easy to do. Like, I'm not tall, I'm not fast, and I'm struggling. But because she's mine, all of mine. I've seen dudes look her up and down when we walk to the mall. And I remember asking one of my guys that used to go to this church, I said, man, I don't know what to do. And I can't fight. Can't. It was big, Swole Rock. It was easy for Swole Rock to say this. I don't know if y'all remember big old Swole Rock. And he looked at me. We were working out together. He was trying to get me to be strong. And I was like, I can't fight. He was like, what you need to fight for? He said, Pierre, don't be jealous. That's a compliment. I said, wait a second. If you reverse that, I see what you're doing. That is a compliment. But why would I be jealous if she's holding my hand? You can try it. You can hopefully don't disrespect her. You can't look at her any type of way. But if you notice her beauty, I can't excuse that. Because I'm not jealous. She's mine. God's looking at you and say, you're mine. You don't belong to nobody else. People can pass by you, but you're supposed to be mine. The issue is some of us see the people looking at us. We see the things that we want. And we leave God's hand, and God's like, wait a second, you were supposed to be mine. See, the reason why God sees you as his possession, so you were supposed to be his, he's like, there's no other gods before me. Nahum 1:2-8 says that he is a jealous God, but that also means he is a avenging God, that you are his people. But not only does he use that, he changes, he says, you shall destroy any of their high places. High places where they were used to do some false things. They used to have some ways of worshiping their gods that is not appropriate for church, but they would do some things that were a little bit faulty, and they would shape some graven images, and they would kind of make sure that their high places were high and exalted, and they made sure that their gods were what? Lifted up on high. So the first thing you do when you get there is you make sure all those high places are destroyed. But what will you find out later? As they went to those same high places and worshiped those same gods. If you find out later on in 1st and 2nd Kings, you'll see that they repeated the cycle of going up, destroying things, realizing they worshiped the wrong gods, and then doing what? Going back and doing it again all over again. 1st and 2nd Kings, you go to Joshua where they didn't destroy all the gods. They left some places alone, and they didn't obey this commandment all the way back in Deuteronomy chapter 12. So what they did is they let other gods exist. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the reason why church attendance struggles, the reason why giving struggles, because you let other gods exist with you. You let some other people have high places in your life. And I'm gonna transform this topic because I think we talked about idols last week. Last week we talked about the fact that anything that can change your your mood, your attention is what you give your time to. It is something that takes the place of God. That means if God comes first and we say, hey, I'm gonna take this away, you stop depending on God and want that thing back. That is your idol. But I'm gonna change this just since we talked about it last week. Let's change another idol today. What about yourself? You know what I've learned is that many of us make ourselves an idol. That means your feelings come first. What you want comes first. Your desire for somebody comes first. Your desire for people comes first. You have stopped realizing that God is everything. He is your father when you were missing. He is your husband when you don't have one. He is the wife that you need. He is the one that does everything for you. But many of us have said, you know what? I still need me. That's a new God. But let me tell you a story. It happens all the way down, and if you don't have a chance to turn there, but if you go to Exodus chapter 32, you'll realize that they did the same thing. In Exodus chapter 32, they had an opportunity to see God in His high and holy. You had Moses walk up to the mountain, and then they had a cloud around the mountain. Nobody could touch the mountain, but while they were waiting, they said God was taking too long. So they went to Aaron, and they took off their earrings, their gold chains, and everything, and gave it to Aaron so that they can make a what? An idol. The weird thing about the idol they made is it came from Egypt, the same place that God just rescued them from, and they decided to worship a calf while God was sitting on a mountain. Ladies and gentlemen, you have God sitting still on His high throne, but many of us have taken off our earrings, sold things, made sure we have allocated things this way, and God's looking at you like, wait, I took you from that. Why are you still making it a God? Oh, the reason why some of us struggle with giving, and the reason why some of us struggle with worship, the reason why some of us are sleepy when we walk into churches is not because God left His throne. It's because we have decided that He's taking too long. Whew. Man, I wonder how many of us in this room have given up on God answering your prayer because He's just taking too long. You have taken God off of His throne thinking He still doesn't reign because He hasn't answered the prayer request that you wanted the way He wanted to answer it. So that's what we start doing. We start answering our own prayer requests, start taking off our rings, start selling things, start doing different things, start marrying different people, start dating different people, trying to find out that we can have new idols in our life. And God's like, you can't worship two gods at the same time. You can't have a calf and a mountain at the same time. Because if you know anything about the rest of the story, who walks down the mountain? He's like, and he says, go down, your people tripping. He goes down, he breaks the 10 commandments, realized they was tripping. And he made them what? Eat that. Oh. Horrible mess. But I'll tell you another story if you don't understand where I'm going. There was another story where they try to take the ark of God, God's presence, God's name. They try to put it in 1 Samuel chapter 5, verse 2. And they try to, watch this word, they try to put the ark, the Philistines try to put the ark next to their God. All right. I'm just trying to paint the picture that God don't play with him. God is not in a competition. The Philistines weren't of God, so they just said, hey, we'll put it next to the other God. We got plenty of gods. Let's put it next to the other God. And Dagon kept falling down. So they was like, no, let's put him back up. And he was like, no, you ain't going to stand next to me, bro. You're going to have to fall. But you're going to have to fall face first because every God that you think is going to fall face first before my altar, you don't understand. So my ark is where I reside. There can be no idols where I reside. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered why things are falling down in your life? Oh. You ever wonder why certain areas of your life keep falling down and falling face first, and you keep trying to pick it back up, and you keep trying to pick it back up, and you're like, I'm going to get this man back, and I'm going to get this woman back, and I'm going to keep making this work, and I'm going to try to make my bills work, and God keeps making it fall down. He said, there will be no other God but me. Stop putting other things in the way. If certain areas of your life are falling down, does not mean God wants them there. It means He's trying to take your idols away. Oh, I remember when I tried to make Monica an idol, that was the first time we ever broke up, or almost broke up. It happened right at camp, and I was like, always worried about what she was doing and thinking. And God was like, oh, I got something for you. I'm finna make this relationship fall flat on its face. I don't know how many of y'all have this situation in your life where you have areas of your life that are falling flat. But God's like, I don't compete with Dagons. They don't belong in the same place with me. So when you walk into this church, guess what God's telling you? I'm not going to compete with nothing else. Not your feelings, not your emotions, because I want you here. I deserve this. Here's the thing I'm starting to understand is God is telling you, I'm not asking, I deserve it. Here's the thing I think the American church has fallen for. We think we're doing God a favor by our attendance. And God's like, no, you're not doing me a favor by walking in on Sunday. I deserve you walking in on Sunday. Your prayer life is a favor. I split the veil for you so you can have access to me. That's a favor. You're missing the point. So then guess what he says? He switches the verse, and all of a sudden you see the verse goes on in Deuteronomy, and Moses says something else. I love this how he says this. You shall not act like this towards your God. You can't do that. You can't bring another God here. You can't act like this towards your God. Living Word Fellowship Church, I'm asking you right now, how many of you are acting like this towards your God? Not my God. I know who my God is. How many of you keep bringing other people, other things, other idols to worship? Have you ever felt distant from God? Have you ever walked in the sanctuary not even wanting to be here? It may be because you keep bringing things with you. People with you. Past pains, past abuses, past obedience issues. You keep bringing it with you. And God's like, when you come to my altar, you come only bearing gifts for me. And we'll talk about that, but watch the next word. He says, you can't treat your God like that. I'm finna shift gears on you. He's going to go from verse 3 to verse 4, and when verse 4 to verse 5, and when he does this, he shifts gears. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you, I'll tell you a lot about this trip. On this trip, we had this guy. I don't think he's even here, but he was driving a car. The rental car was provided by the ministry that we had to go do, and then on the way there, the same person bought us Olive Garden, which is, outdated, but it is what it is. It's like, I'm not going to say anything, but it's like the Chili's of Italian food, but we'll keep moving. I was grateful. Sorry, Pastor, I was grateful. I did. I ate. We had some vegetarians with us, and we were in Tennessee. There's nothing in Tennessee. All right. So we're driving, but I started realizing this dude drive a little bit slow. Now, I'm cool with you. Not really. But my point is, like, if you drive the speed limit, I understand. I always go 5 to 7 over. 7 reason is because that's God's number. So, therefore, I can't get a ticket if it's God's number. All right. Moving on. It's in 3 Corinthians. You can read it yourself. Don't turn. If somebody turning, we need to talk after church. Is it? I realized that he just drives so slow. And I was like, man, brother, just come on, at least go to speed limit, man. Like, at least try to keep up. Because I'm the only one that has a GPS, but that's not the point. So on the way back, though, I realized that we went on the way. I told y'all about Shake Shack last week, right? Good. Y'all were here last week. I told y'all about Shake Shack in Charlotte's airport. On the way back, though, I realized he was keeping up just fine. When we landed from Chattanooga to Charlotte, I'm not going to talk about anybody else in this room who didn't understand that. When we landed from Chattanooga to Charlotte, I realized he got off the plane a little bit more expedient. He got his bag, and he was no longer moving slow, because this same man drives slow, walks slow, talks slow. Yeah, brother. But all of a sudden, he got off the plane. He was like, well, we're going to get the burger, right? Same dude that was chilling on the way to go teach God's word was like, hey, bro, we going to get that burger? Coming asking me like, hey, man, how long's our layover, bro? We got 1 hour and 15 minutes. We going to make it. Now, watch this. This is when I knew he wanted the burger. I went to them, and I was like, fam, y'all got 20 minutes to walk to the plane. I decided to walk. I went to go buy Monica a little gift, and I was like, cool, I'll meet y'all on the plane. I look up. They still ain't there. But all of a sudden, guess who I see walking in with his big self? Made it to his seat. And I started to realize, like, wait a second, you drive slow. But when you want what you want, you move fast. How come when we come to church, we move slow? But when we want what we want, we're willing to almost be late for a plane in order to get what we want. If you love God that much, you should be hustling every morning to make sure you're in his presence here at church. You should make it to communion because you realize you get a chance to eat your favorite meal of the day. Because communion is where we get to remember where Jesus Christ died on the cross for our sins and rose 3 days later. So you should be rushing to get here at 11 o'clock. You should be like, oh, man, don't leave the plane without me. I want to get my burger. My issue is that many of us don't love God like we like our burgers. Because if you love God like you like your burgers, you wouldn't be driving slow. You get your kids up like old school when you had your clothes ready the night before. When you go on that date, many of us get haircuts. We get faded up. We ready. We get the beard lined up. You early to her house. You get flowers on the way. I hope. I don't know why I can't find a wife. No, this is things you need to do. Okay, so like, but because you want her. But guess what happens in relationships? Some of us get a little comfortable, don't we? We stop getting faded up. We stop bringing flowers. We start taking it to Chili's instead of what we were spending when we was dating. I'm just joking. I love Chili's. I love Chili's. My point is this, is that many of us treat God the same way. We get comfortable with God. We start showing up a little later. We stop giving the same way. We stop loving him the same way because we stop bringing him flowers. We stop saying, God, you're worth all of it. I'm going to show up a little early because I want to serve. I want to come during the week. He's not just a Sunday God. I'm going to make sure I serve my church. I'm going to make sure I give him my time, my attention. I'm going to open my word because he's worth it. Let me get faded up so I can go to church. And that's what he says next. In the next couple of verses, he says these words. I want you to pay attention to these verses. It goes like this. He says, verse 5, but you shall seek, watch these words, seek the Lord at the place. Now, remember, I just read about the places above. Remember, he says, tear down their places. Now I need you to seek my place. But it wasn't until they did what? Tore down those places were they able to seek, which the word seek means to what? It literally means to make supplication, seek carefully. That means I want you to tear this down, and then I want you to seek carefully for me. You got to tear one down first, though. And then when you tear this down, you need to seek carefully for the place of God. Ladies and gentlemen, the beauty of what I'm fixing to talk about is I'm not saying Living Word's a perfect church. I'm not saying you have to join if you're visiting. What I am saying is that when you come, you should be seeking where God resides. But you should be careful with how you do it. So when you come, you ask questions. You ask about doctrine. You ask about issues. You go through new members classes. You start to date us a little bit. My point is that you want to be careful with God's presence. Because in Revelations, it says what? That he'll take away his lampstand from a church. And I'm not just talking about attendance, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not talking about how the worship service goes. I'm talking about that God says, if they don't love me, if they've left their first love, that's one of them, then I'm going to take away my lampstand. The question I have for you is when you come to Living Word Fellowship Church, you should be seeking God's presence here. And I have a strong belief. That's why I work here. That's why I love it here. That's why I believe in the leadership here, is because I truly believe the lampstand still stands. But you should be seeking every Sunday, every moment, every time you have an opportunity to be in God's presence. He says, I want you to seek. The first thing I love about this, he says, watch this. Watch these words, because I often think this new way of doing church is like, I'll just watch it online, or I'll just watch it live streamed, or I'll just stay home and stay in my pajamas. And we have this new vibe to church, right, where it's like, oh, at your convenience. This is what we do now. And I would love that, but that's not what this verse is fixing to tell us. It says this. It says, you shall seek the Lord at the place which the Lord God will choose. Now watch what he says. I choose it. I choose it. I have designated a place for you to go worship. But the place where he chose was a central place, not one place, not a place off on the left and the right. Not every church is where God is. So therefore, he says, I choose where I go. Now here's the beauty of God. He don't go everywhere. He's not at every church. Meaning that, again, you could take the lampstand out if necessary because I don't reside where I'm not taught. I don't reside where I'm not properly worshiped. I don't reside where they don't serve me. I don't reside where they don't love me. So therefore, there's only a certain couple places, that's essential places where we can come, but therefore, that means the place when you find it, you should be dedicated to it. It says the sanctuary, which we all know ended up being in Jerusalem when they built the sanctuary for God. And I can't have time to go into details of how they built it, but it took a time. But it says you will choose, watch these words, from all tribes. That means every tribe was made to go to the central place. So I don't care where you're from, what money you come from, what job you have, middle class, low class, or high class. That means every tribe has no excuse not to meet here. Oh, I love that. I wish Living Word had more diversity, I'll be honest with you. The funny thing about Angelina cracking that joke when she got up here is many of y'all believe it. Like, they kind of look alike. I'll do the math. About 15, that's about average age. No. And jokingly, I'm not mad at anybody, but they'll walk up to Angelina like, so is that your mom's? And you know why they ask that question? Because when you black, everybody else looks the same. So Monica and Angelina, everybody looked the same. So like, bet y'all must be related. Because guess what? We lack what? All tribes. We lack diversity. It's like when I was on the plane the other day, this lady walked up to me, Anthony Young, and this guy that was there, and asked us all of us if that was our bag. I love Anthony. He looked better than me. But we don't look alike at all. I turned to Anthony and I said, bro, I guess we all look alike today. We lack diversity here. Every tribe should be able to come and worship in a central place. We should be welcoming here. I don't want to just be black church. I want you to feel safe here, though. We're going to honor our history, though. But it doesn't mean we're the only place that comes to worship here. That God chooses where he goes to. He goes down a little further, and this is important. He says, choose all the tribes to establish his name there for his dwelling. Oh, there you shall come. You ain't got a choice. You won't have a choice. When I decide to put my presence there, everybody should be running to the central location to experience my presence and my name. But here's the beauty, is that when you come to the place of Jerusalem, when you come, you don't just come empty-handed. Let me break this down for you. This is going to sound rude, and some of y'all are already turning me off when I switch gears from point 1 to point 2, and I get it, and I'm sorry about your bulletin. It ain't the same notes. They made a mistake, but just look on the slide behind me. We're going to shift here, but I want to, if you are any of Latino culture or African-American culture, if you go to a picnic, a house dwelling, what is your protocol? Bring something. You can't just show up. Now, there's a rule also I've learned. If you can't cook, your job is to bring what? Drinks, napkins, and plates. Now, if you can't cook, I've also learned, stop trying because your food will be left there. And then you feel disrespected. No, we look at it. Here's the thing about African American and Latino noses. We smelt your food when you walked by. We was like, not today. I seen her on Facebook. Oh, I love when black people look at people's hair to see if it fell in their food. Not that one. They have potlucks at work, and you always see the Caucasian lady, and you're like, not that one. She ain't getting her potato salad. That ain't grandma's. Did she put carrots in her potato salad? Is that apricots? Not today. But if we know not to bring these things to a picnic, and we know not to come empty-handed when we go to get some food from somebody else's house, how can we come get food here at Living Word Fellowship Church and we all come empty-handed? And I'm not just talking about money, because everybody's like, Zach, he really digging for money. And I'm like, no. You should come ready to worship. There's no song choice that gets you out of your seat. These walls should not contain our worship. You should come ready for this worship. Because you know you come into God's picnic and you know you're going to get fed. You know you're going to get that word. You know you're going to get that worship. You like, nah, I'm coming with plates. And here's the thing. I want you to understand something. Even if you don't have a lot of money, you can still bring the plates. You can still bring the napkins. I'm not talking about a lot of money. I'm talking about what God has allowed you to have. So if you can't cook, if you don't have a lot of money, God's saying, I want you to drop that little mite, let it dingle all the way down. I want you to know that God is still seeing you and saying, you did the best you could with what I gave you. So therefore, bring your napkins, bring your plates, and bring them drinks, because somebody got to bring something. The issue is we like that woman that tries to sneak into the picnic. And you know the crazy thing about the person who sneaks in with no food? They always have a takeaway plate. Y'all thought I was going to leave y'all out? I was like, I almost snuck out of church. Here's the same thing about church. It's the same people who don't bring and don't serve. When you have the 80-20 rule where 20% of the people are serving and giving and 80% of people eating, for some reason the 80% like to take a takeaway plate but don't do nothing with it. No. Because right here he tells you, oh, watch this, we're going to break down a lot of them because I want you to understand what God tells you to come with. Oh, why I want you to pay attention, because when he said you come, when he says I make this place, I choose where I dwell, you can't come not thinking, I don't want my worship. Now you're going to talk about tithes and offering, I get it. But I'm talking about my worship. The reason why we do tithes and offering in the middle of service is because it's what? My worship. You're giving as a part of your worship service. So therefore, what he says, when you come to this place, when you come to the central place, watch verse 6. Look how many words he uses to talk about what you're coming with. Verse 6, there you shall bring your what? Burnt offerings. The word burnt offerings is very simple, is that they would place their hand on it, and that was their way of saying, we're going to burn this up because it belongs to God in the first place. So when you come to church, your offering, when you're saying, hey, God, I'm going to put this down because it belongs to God in the first place. It's easy to give with a joyful spirit because you realize it wasn't yours in the first place. So they would place their hand on it before they burned it and said, God, this is yours because you made it and gave it to me in the first place. I didn't make the calf. I didn't create the cow. I didn't do the chickens. I didn't do the rooster. I didn't do any of these goats. So therefore, God, since you gave me all this, the least I can do is burn something up for you. So the first thing he says, I want to give you a burnt offering, but the burnt offering has a meaning. The burnt offering is saying, God, I am totally dependent on you. Whew. Oh, man, when I started doing this research, I started realizing that every offering he mentioned has a meaning. And the first one, he said burnt offering, he's saying, hey, look, God, look, when I give this to you, I'm letting you know I got nobody but you. Here's the issue, what I learned about American Christianity and what they were going through, is that guess who caused droughts? If you look throughout the Bible, the same thing they were dependent on, God had to make it happen. So because they were so dependent on him for their agriculture and their cattle and all the livestock that they had, they realized they were dependent on him. You know what happens in American Christianity? We just go get another job. So you forget that you're dependent on him. So some of us are like, I'm cool. I don't necessarily need God. It's not until God has to knock down your idol do you realize you what? Need God. So my warning is don't let God knock down your stuff before you realize you need to put your hand on it and say, God, I'm dependent on you. I can't do it without you. You should give it freely because you realize your job came from him, your oxygen came from him, the house came from him, that beat up car came from him, that gas came from him, that little $2 you found in your pocket, that came from him. So therefore, it's easy to give a burnt offering because you realize where it came from. And since you realize where it came from, you're also saying, God, I'm dependent. I need you today. Have you ever woke up in the morning and said, God, I just need you? You finna walk to the same boss, same employees you got to fool with, same husband, same wife, and I wonder how many of us just get up and try to do it again, or some of us just say, God, I need you. Burning up is saying, God, I don't even need this no more because that's yours in the first place. The crazy thing about burning something is it don't come back. But that's not how God works. You burn it up and it comes back. I'm not talking about the actual animal. I'm saying God keeps providing for you. Oh, so they could burn it up and still be like, I'm good. You could put your offering in the box and still say, I'm still good because my God is going to provide it for me. That's the coolest thing about it, is that God's not asking you to burn up and get nothing. Because God is saying, I provided for you in the first place. It's easy to drop something. It's easy to give on the app. It's easy to do these things because I'm the one that gave it to you in the first place. Let's move on. Because not only did he talk about burnt offerings, watch the next word he uses. He says sacrifices. Let me give you the definition of sacrifices. Because offerings are thanksgiving unto God, which brought fellowship, communion, union with God. So when the difference between an offering and a sacrifice was him saying, God, I want fellowship with you. So therefore, I'm going to sacrifice something. It's going to tie into the New Testament in a second because you're going to realize that he had to sacrifice what? Something in order for you to have fellowship with him. So when they were doing it in the Old Testament, they were saying, God, I want fellowship with you. Therefore, I'll give you the best I have because I'm desperate for you to be in communion with me. The question that many of us, I'm wondering, because watch this, Jesus showed you when he was the final what? Sacrifice. That's why you're not burning anything, how desperate he was to have communion with you. He has done his part to tell you how desperate he wants and loves you. The question I have for Living Word Fellowship Church is how many of us are desperate to have fellowship with God? That means I want a relationship with you. So therefore, I'm willing to sacrifice my life, my time, my attention, my service. I'll give everything to you because I just want your fellowship. Oh, I wonder if I have that heart sometimes where I'm desperate just to have relationship with him. I'm desperate to have relationship with other people. I'm desperate to go hang out with the fellas. But am I just as desperate as I am for my wife, as I am for God? Or do I show up on Sunday and be like, bet, all right, let me at least try to raise my hands and fake this. All right, bet, I'm listening to the sermon. I know what he's going to say. He think he funny. He ain't that funny. You're not supposed to agree. I know, I think he does think he's funny. Or are you so desperate to come to his central place that you're knocking down doors? You know what's crazy? I'm going to tell y'all the truth. We were building this building. I was in one of those meetings. And pastor had a meeting about the parking lot. Watch this. Watch these words I'm finna have. Not the worship, not anything that would contribute to what we call the worship service. He had to have a conversation about a parking lot. You know what he said? He looked at me and he gave the same voice. I told y'all when he says son, it means something. Son, I know you don't think this means anything, but people, when they come and they see the parking lot and they don't have access, they leave. I was like, nah, you tripping, bro. He said, son, I'm trying to tell you, if their heels like woggle a little bit in the dirt, they leave. If they hit that wop wop, they leave. Pop flop, they leave. Isn't that crazy that a parking lot can stop you from worshiping at your church? Isn't it crazy that rain can have attendance a different type of way? Isn't it crazy that when football season starts back up, some of us are going to be missing? Isn't it crazy that we make excuses for worshiping God, but won't make excuses for going to work? Some of us. Because you're not desperate for his fellowship. Some of us are like, I'll just watch it online. But that ain't the central place. Oh, man. But he gives 3 more, and I'm going to go as fast as I can. He says, these are types of sacrifices I want you to know. He says, your sacrifice, we'll get to tithes. We did that last week, but we'll get to your tithes. And it says, the contributions of your hands. Now, watch these words for offering. We'll talk about those 2 in a second. We'll get back to it. But then it says, your votive offerings. Your votive means when I make a vow, I sacrifice so that you can know my vow is serious. That's number 1. Number 2, he says, this word is very important. He says, your free will offering. This means voluntary gift. That means you do it because you want to give it because you recognize who God is. But you're like, well, I'd rather have that than having to give my 10%. Some people even debate that in the church. Should we call it tithes or should we call it offerings? That's why when we do the announcements, we say tithes and offering because it's really both. But some people debate it because it should be a free will offering. I shouldn't be forced to give. It should be my what? My free will. But if you were to go all the way to Exodus chapter 36, they had to stop them from doing free will offering because they were so in love with giving to God. So some of us, you think you want to play with free will? Free will means that you are so desperate to give, they have to stop you from giving because you realize everything came from him. So if you want that one, go right ahead. But at the end of the day, tithe is 10%. Free will means you give above and beyond what you have. Oh, we should be at free will. I'm just thankful that some of us choose to tithe. But guess what? Neither one of those were an option. That's the kicker. He didn't say or, if. No, he said both and. That I want your free will, your tithes and your offering. And again, it's not about the church. It's not about Pierre Cannings. Y'all seen the same suits I wear. This is just a rotation. Y'all know it ain't going nowhere to my pocket. Y'all see, this is the same shoes from last year. They don't change. But guess who can change? I'm trying to take your old thoughts away. I just want you to focus. Well, guess whose life can change? An orphan, a widow, a drug addict, COC, the mission trips, go to Africa, go to Rwanda. These are things that we shouldn't have to struggle to do. These are things we should be excited to do. We should be able to give to missionaries above and beyond because they're out on the mission field, but yet living word struggle. And that's what I'm trying to say is that we shouldn't have to struggle, not for the pastor's sake, not for the people that work here's sake, even though that also means something because that was a part of the Bible as well as for the Levite priests. We talk about that week. That was a tithes and offering. But we should not have to struggle to say, let me take you in, orphan. Let me take care of you, widow. Our benevolence fund should be overflowing because people come with needs all the time and we consistently give, but we already know when we give, we ain't got nothing to replace it. That should not be the case. Oh, think how much ministry we could do if people said, oh, I'm all in. Because I realize where it came from and I realize where it's going. Then he says a couple more words, and he says the law of the firstborn. These were special gifts. How many things have I said so far? 5. Picture that. 5. When God said, when you come, I got 5 things and I'm not even done. I haven't done contributions of your hand. I haven't done none of that yet. I haven't even defined that for you. Think about what he's saying. He's saying, when you come, you should never come to my place empty-handed. Because you need fellowship with me. You need to show me you appreciate me. You need to show me that you made your vow in seriousness. And you just need to give me a gift because I'm God. We can't come to church empty-handed. Tithes was a particular tribute paid to be grateful to God and dependent on him. So tithes was another way of saying I'm grateful and I'm dependent on you. I know last week I gave you a whole bunch of definitions. I pray that you have your notes from last week. But I want you to at least summarize what a tithe is that he's saying, hey, your 10%. Like I told y'all last week, they walk over with the staff. And whatever the 10% of the staff hit, they took. They didn't exchange it. Because they said, God, you deserve the 10%. And I always told y'all last week, I said many of us should have put our staff over what we own and say, God, you can gracefully have your 10% because you gave me all 90 and 100 in the first place. I wish I had time for everything, but I tell you is that you can't do this if you still have an idol in your life. The reason why many of us struggle with this sermon is because we still have idols in our life. So therefore, when we talk about giving, it's offensive because you're worried about more things other than what God wants from you. This is not about an option. This is about God telling you what to do. And I know this is hard to say, and I'm trying to my best to be politically correct because I don't want anybody thinking the church is all about money, but I think we should do some amazing things here at Living Word. I think we have more to do as well. The vision is not complete. Think how many people we can help. The reason why we're in Acres Home Community, we want to change our community. We want to change where we at. Let me stop. Some of y'all heard this story, so I'll be quick with it. When I asked Monica to marry me, I had a plan. I waited till sunset. I got a horse and I put it out in the middle of the field. I wrapped the horse up in blue ribbon because that's her favorite color. We walked the horse around the camp, and on every tree there was a poem of how beautiful she was, inside and out. Then we went over the dam. It's not a cuss word. It's really a dam. And we went over the dam. I waited and timed it to make sure the sun was going down right when we got it over the dam. And on the other side of the lake, there was 3 posters that says, 23 years, and you've been with me for 3 or 6. I don't know. What was it? 5. I said, but will you spend the rest of your life with me? And we got to the last tree. It said, with me. And then by this time, we're fixing to walk over a bridge. And in the lake, I had some candles that got burnt out because they were water. And I had some Christmas tree lights that I hung around the trees, and it led to this fire that I had lit. And even though my brother gave me the worst fate of my life ever, he never cut my hair after that. Ever. Had me looking like Sam Cassell. I got down on my knee. That was not because of you. Talk about this after church. I got down on my knee. I bought the most expensive ring I can afford, and I gave it to her, all because she was worth it. When you come to church, you should be writing about how beautiful God is. He shouldn't be able to pass a tree without you saying, God, this is because of you. God, this is because of you. That God, this is because of you. So let me walk you on your horse and tell you how magnificent you are. And then because he made a vow, you should be like saying, God, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, but I'm not going to come to this engagement without bringing you something. I'm not getting on a knee empty-handed. I'm going to make sure I'm going to give you everything I can afford. Even if I don't got a lot of money, this ring is all I have because I love you this much. I'm asking a question is how many of us in this room are walking by trees saying, God, I couldn't breathe without you. You are magnificent. You feed the calves. You feed everything. You feed my family. You put things on the table. Let me walk you a little bit further because that sun that's going down, you made that. So therefore, let me go a little bit further, and I'm going to go over this tree and say, God, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. So here we go, God. I can't wait to get home and hit my knee and say, God, you are worth every single thing, but will you spend the rest of your life with me? Because all you are worth it. So there's no way I can come to your central place and put you in empty-handed. Let us pray.